Alright, furries, there's a stigma in this fandom that we need to get our ass over. That's a stigma that if we're not stuck behind our computers all the damn time on our free time, looking at furry whatever and anything else that has to do with the internet, then we're not a real furry. Guess what? I'm challenging that stigma. I'm a real furry and I don't stick my ass behind the computer screen 24/7. I actually do stuff. And here's what I do. I like to read. You are probably familiar with that term reading because you kind of have to do it on a computer screen for a lot of the stuff that you do. But I'm not talking about that. I'm not necessarily talking about going to a website and reading something. I'm not talking about that. Not at all. Not at all. I'm talking about getting off of the computer entirely. Not necessarily shutting it off, but getting off the computer entirely and sitting down and curling up with a good book, disconnecting yourself from the world. Sitting down with a good book. You know those things, those archaic things we used to work with back in our school days? You remember those things? If you don't, this is called a book. It's got paper in it. It's got pages of paper in it, numbered in sequential order. It has words formed into coherent sentences and paragraphs made thereafter. And those paragraphs form chapters that form an entire storyline that we follow and learn little bits and pieces of the story and what's going on and so forth and so on. Did we forget how to do that? Now I know some of the school furries back in the younger years, they really haven't, because they really haven't had enough time out of the school environment to forget stuff like this. But a lot of us have, and a lot of us have. This particular book I really enjoyed. This is the Odyssey. I'm going to hold it up here. This is the Odyssey. It is by Homer. This is a Greek epic. Now, if you're thinking of epics, you're probably thinking of Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, even Harry Potter. This came first. And this formed really the base of all the epics that thereafter followed thereafter. This is where it all started. Writers like these, and arguably a lot of people look at Homer, who this particular book is by, as being one of the masters of action and adventure and mystery and mythology wrapped into a story. This has to do with Greek gods and sirens and nymphs and demons and look. Okay, we're going to review this book because this is actually the beginning of furry book review that I'm doing. So here's the review of The Odyssey. The Odyssey starts out with a man named Odysseus going out to war with the Trojan Empire, or with the Trojans, or whatever it was called. He was going to war with the Trojans, with a few other nationalities backing him. Those nationalities are not necessarily important to the story. Okay? Now, he takes 10 years out of his life watching his child, 10 years of not watching his child grow up. His child was born just before he left. And then something bad happened. He came up with the idea of the Trojan horse. This is where the legend of the Trojan horse came from, actually. He comes up with that idea and tries to execute it, but somebody almost gives it away. And Poseidon, the Greek god of the sea and of horses, yes, I actually know his secondary godship, sends a sea beast of some kind and kills this soothsayer, but Poseidon takes credit for it. Awesome, isn't it? This angers Poseidon. In fact, he was so arrogant, Odysseus was, as a matter of fact, that he angered really all the major pantheon gods of the Greek pantheon, of the Olympian gods, as we would call them. And as punishment, Odysseus was not allowed to make it home to his home in Ithaca. And for another 10 years, he tried to get home. He tried his damnedest. And the things that he went through to get home, he lost his entire crew, his ship. He lost lost everything, really. He almost lost his kingdom because of his pride, his arrogant pride. He could have gone home earlier, but he didn't. He almost lost his wife. His mother died, killing herself. She committed suicide because she couldn't stand waiting for Odysseus to return home. This really touched me because this kind of is, I've kind of gone through my own Odyssey since I moved away from my parents in 2008, when I moved to Indiana, then to Idaho, and now to here in Colorado. This book really meant a lot to me, and I would recommend it hands down, paws down, whatever you want to call it. Pick yourself up a copy of this. This is only a short review because I threw in an introduction to the review and the challenge out there, but pick it up. Seriously, pick it up and read it. It'll be a little thick to get through because it's the way it's translated. It's translated in the English that would have well, it's Greek translated into English, and it's ancient Greek phrasing that is used throughout the book. So it's a little thicker to get through, but it has footnotes if you need to understand anything. But do get this book. Read it. That is the Odyssey. It is by Homer. And the one that I have is through Barnes & Noble's Classics. And this one is translated by George Herbert Palmer and edited with an introduction and notes by Richard Squillis. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Pick it up. Curl up with it. And really really wrap yourself in Odysseus's Odyssey home. This is Palmer Husky. Next month, we'll be reviewing another book, and I think you'll recognize what that book is when we go through it. Alright, have a good one, furries, and take that challenge, because if you don't, you're just a stigma. You're just a number.